StrayAllDay.com.
You're now tuned in to the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day, to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative, which is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into one bundle, one framework, one philosophy, one approach, one mindset. We got a daily masterclass here. We got several books. And all of this goes under one umbrella that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is how to be tough in a world in which weakness is celebrated. Now, I'm gonna get into explaining why this topic is a topic, but first, let me tell you that I have a text message line where I want you to text me and tell me your feedback from today's episode. It could be a question, it could be a comment, it can be a compliment, it could be a critique, anything that you want to share with me based on what you heard here today. My number is 305-384-6894. And once you text me there, not only will you be able to engage with me, you will also be in my community, which means you're receiving my daily motivation text message, which I send out every single day for free. Texting me is completely free. Anyone who is in my community is going to get that daily motivation text. Ask one of your friends who's already getting it what they think about it. Let them just show you your phone. Let them just show you their phone and show you the text that they get. And if they ever text me back, then they can actually see, you'll be able to see the replies that I send back, because I do reply to people who text me. The number again, 305-384-6894. Now this topic right here, how to be tough when weakness is celebrated. In the world that we're living in today, and listen, we understand that, and this is something I talked about before, that the world is always changing. There's always some kind of change, some kind of wave going on. And depending on what you pay attention to, you may notice certain changes and not notice other changes. One thing that I have noticed in the world that we're living in right now is that anyone who is able to maneuver in such a way they can present themselves as weak is being celebrated. If you present yourself as a victim, you're being celebrated. You present yourself as someone who needs to be protected, then you're being celebrated. If you are pushing away from the table of something that you signed up to do, but then you don't want to complete it, and you're saying, well, look, I don't want to finish this because of something that has occurred within me, something that has occurred externally, that we would traditionally say, well, that's weak. We would traditionally say, well, look, you're not fulfilling your commitment. Traditionally, we would say, well, look, you're quitting. Now people are pushing back. There's this counter culture that is saying, well, no, that's actually strength. That person is actually showing courage. That person is actually being a leader because they are being willing to be a victim. They're willing to present themselves as they need to be protected. They're presenting themselves as someone who's walking away, and we need to applaud them for being willing to do so. What I'm here to say today, I'm going to tell you how you can maintain your toughness, your internal toughness, when we are living in a world in which it seems that being weak is like the popular thing to do. Weak is the new black, as to borrow the metaphor. And before I get into going into our points, I want to tell you a few episodes where I talked about toughness and talked about mental toughness. Episode 941 told you how to develop mental toughness. Then I followed up and talked about it again about a year later, episode 1386, how to develop and maintain mental toughness. I've also talked about the difference between strength and toughness. That was episode 1076. Episode 1038, how to get past the toughest gatekeeper in your life, which is yourself. Episode 615, how to have tough conversations in life. Episode 119, fighting through the tough days. Episode 1830, how powerful people make tough choices. And episode 1307, how to not be a biatch, how to not be a bitch in life. I would suggest that you refer yourself to all of those episodes, all those masterclasses after this one for supplemental material and everything that we're talking about here today. The topic, once again, is how to be tough when weakness is celebrated. I'm not going to give any more introduction because everything is inside our point. So let's get to it. Point number one. The definition of toughness is, quote, strong enough to withstand adverse conditions or rough or careless handling, close quote. That's the definition of tough. Withstanding adverse conditions, or at least being strong enough to do so. If you want to be tough, you must hang in there when things are tough. If you want to be tough, you must keep going when things get tough. These are the conditions of toughness. Again, this is a straight definition straight out of the dictionary. So let me be clear where I stand, just so everybody knows. It is not tough or strong to walk off the job when a job gets tough. If someone does that, that is not tough. Now, I'm not saying that they don't have a right to do so. I'm not saying that they are breaking a law in doing so. I'm not condemning them for doing so. But we're not going to call something tough that's not tough. The definition of tough is strong enough to withstand adverse conditions or careless handling. If you back away or walk away or run away or push away when things get tough, that is not toughness, that is not strength, and is not leadership. If you got people following you and you walk away when things get tough, what are they going to do? Now again, you have the right to walk away if you wish, but let's be clear. We are not going to conflate what tough actually means. We're not going to confuse toughness with the exact opposite of it, which is walking away, not following through on your commitments, what some people may call quitting, depending on what the situation is. Again, I'm not saying this to talk down on people who beg off a job. They make that choice for themselves. You could do whatever the hell you want to do with your own life. But this episode, what we're talking about right now today, this episode is about how toughness is built and how it is used. And it is built by staying in the game and continuing to play the game when things do get tough. That is what my book, The Third Day, is about. The decision that separates the pros from the amateurs. You cannot be a pro if you walk away every time it gets tough. You can't be a pro if every time things get tough, you need a timeout and you need a few minutes to recuperate. You cannot be a pro if you don't show up when things are actually tough, when things are actually rough, when things are not going the way that you want them to go. The pros show up anyway, and they figure it out. They work through it. They deal with the rough days. They go through the 30 days. That's what makes them a pro. That's the reason why people pay them, because people know that they're going to show up and they're going to deliver even when the circumstances are not necessarily in the favor of that professional. That's the essence of the third day. It is the definition of toughness. Point number 2. Today's topic, once again, is how to be tough when weakness is celebrated. What's the definition of weak? Definition is, quote, liable to break or give way under pressure, easily damaged, close quote. Challenge, internal challenge or external challenge, is something that you want. It is not something to be avoided. That is, if you're looking to build toughness. You want to build toughness in yourself, in your life. You want challenges. You want to face circumstances that will force you to step outside of your comfort zone. You want to be put in a position where you're not sure if you're capable of delivering, and then you challenge yourself to do so. Maybe you'll succeed. Maybe you won't. But to build toughness in life, you have to be willing to stand up and stand tall in the face of those circumstances. You have to be willing to show up when those circumstances present themselves in your life. This is all part of being tough. Showing up when it gets tough, standing up against the rough circumstances, dealing with the fact that you're not quite sure if you'll be able to deliver. This all builds toughness. Weakness is when you break or give way under the pressure of tough circumstances. That is the very definition of weakness. It is not strength to give way under pressure. It is not strength to walk away when things aren't working in your favor. It is not strength to not show up when you have people who are following your lead and then let's just leave it at that. Let's just put a period right there on that point. These days, people are turning away from challenges and being applauded for doing so. Abdicating when things get tough. Listen, you can't become tough by avoiding a tough situation. The tough situations are where you reveal, measure, and build your mental toughness. Now, we know there have been some situations that have occurred lately in the sports world. The one most recently, as of when I'm recording this, was happening in the Olympics when gymnast Simone Biles, who's known as the GOAT, she even had GOAT insignia on her warm-ups or her clothing that she performs in, that labeled her as the greatest of all time. GOAT standing for greatest of all time in gymnastics. And she came out in the Olympics, didn't do well on her first attempt at a particular event, the team event, and then she went back with some type of injury. We didn't know what it was. Came out that she was having what they call the twisties. It was basically she got the yips, as they say in other sports, and she just couldn't perform. Mentally, she just mentally wasn't there. She couldn't do her performance, which meant she might injure herself trying to do some of the very difficult moves that she does in gymnastics, and therefore she abdicated and pulled out of the rest of the team competition and many of the individual competitions. She did finish one competition and won, I believe it was a bronze medal, through the rest of the Olympics. And there was a whole conversation going on, at least in the world that I was paying attention to, about, where do people stand on this? Because Simone Biles, the whole thing came out was that it was mental health. She had a quote unquote mental injury. Same way someone have a physical injury, and there were her advocates or her supporters were saying, well, we need to support the person with the mental injury. Same way we would support the person with the physical injury. And to that point, I agree. Listen, if you have a mental injury and you can't do your thing, you can't go out there and compete, your mind is not in the right space, 100%. And you feel like you can't do it, you can't go out there and do what you signed up for, 100%, that's fine. However, at the same time, you quit. If you sign up for a competition and you don't complete the competition and you leave the competition while it's still going on because you feel mentally you can't deal with the situation, whether it is internal pressure, external pressure, your mind is not in the right space, whatever you want to call it, you quit. You left before the competition was over, especially when you're on a team. And when you're on a team and the team is expecting each person to deliver at a certain level and you could perform, but you're not performing, you quit. And on top of that, and this is something, and I wrote an article about this, by the way, so I'm on the record on this, and you can find that article if you just go to my website, go to dreallday.com/Simone, Simone. You can read the article for yourself. You're on my email list, you might have gotten it when I put it out. At the same time, with Simone Biles in particular, she has a right, again, when it comes to her mental health, to tend to her mental health and put herself first, quote unquote, as I believe either she said it or many of her supporters were saying she put herself first. And we're gonna get to some of the other comments in a moment. But if you are being labeled the GOAT and you embrace the label, now it's one thing that people were saying you're the greatest of all time and you kind of pushed it off like, no, don't call me that. I'm just out here competing. I'm just trying to do my best. But if you embrace it, which she did and has, she embraced this label of I am the greatest of all time. She put the GOAT insignia on her, whatever they call the thing that gymnasts wear when they go perform, whatever you call that piece of clothing. She had the GOAT insignia on there. So she's buying into this whole thing. I'm the greatest of all time. You're calling yourself the greatest of all time. And then you step onto the biggest stage in your sport to perform, and you're already calling yourself the greatest. And then you leave in the middle of the competition after you didn't do too well in your first attempt at a certain movement. All right, you are, what do we want to say about this? You're not standing up to this label of the GOAT. Now, being the GOAT, greatest of all time, doesn't mean that you can't possibly lose. Doesn't mean you can't possibly be beat. Doesn't mean you can't have a bad day or a bad game or a bad performance or airball, free throw, or get dunked on and whatever you're doing, throw an interception, lose the Super Bowl. Doesn't mean that can't happen to you if you're the GOAT, but you got to hang in there and take that loss. Whatever that loss is going to be, if you're the greatest of all time, you got to stand in there and get beat. You don't leave in the middle of the competition, especially a team competition where the rest of the team is expecting you as the greatest of all time to at least deliver on a certain level so that they can all follow behind you and they can do their thing. You're the greatest of all time. So obviously you're the best player on the team, right? I mean, again, you accepted the label. Now, it's one thing if the world was trying to throw it at your feet and you didn't take it, kind of like Julius Caesar refusing the crown of Rome, but you accepted it and you bought into this and you wore it, literally wore this title of the GOAT. And then you leave in the middle? Nah. We can't call you the greatest of all time. You quitting in the middle of the competition. That's the way that I see it. So both things are true. Does she have a right to walk away? Yes. Does she have a right to put herself first? Yes. Does she have a right to tend to her mental injury? Yes. And did she quit? Yes. All of them true. Now again, just in case any of you who are new to how we do things around here, a wise person is capable of holding multiple ideas in their mind at the same time, especially two ideas that could possibly be in conflict with each other. The tough situations in life, like the one Simone Biles went through at the Olympics, are where you reveal, measure, and build your toughness. There's another situation a few months earlier with Naomi Osaka, who's a big-time tennis player, who is one of the best tennis players in the world. She was about to play at Roland Garros, which I believe is the French Open. And she announced on her social media ahead of it that she was not going to speak to the media. Now, apparently speaking to the media is a big deal in tennis. It's actually part of the contract, literally part of the contract when you play in tennis tournaments, that you had to speak to the media. Naomi Osaka was saying she didn't want to speak to the media because sometimes they ask questions that bring doubt into the mind of the athlete. Like, let's say a reporter asks a critical question, or asks a question like, well, hey, you don't do too well on this type of surface, or you don't do too well against this type of opponent, or you made this many unforced errors in your last tournament. In other words, she was saying sometimes reporters ask questions that will seed doubt in the mind of a performer. And I'm about to go perform. I don't want I don't want any type of seeds of doubt planted in my mind ahead of a competition. I 100% understand that. However, I also understand, here we are again with two conflicting ideas, that if you sign a contract that says you're going to speak to the media, then, hey, you signed a contract. Honor your contract. You're a professional, right? You want the best of what you do, right? Okay, honor your contract. And every other athlete who plays, they also had to speak to the media too. So it's not like they're just singling you out to speak to the media. Everybody has to speak to the media. This is the game that you signed up for. Okay, then you got to play the game. Even if you don't give great answers to the questions and the media hates you for it, you still got to play the game because this is the game you signed up for. And she announced on social media she wasn't going to do it. Now, according to what I read, the organizers of these events, or this particular event, Roland Garros, they reached out to Naomi and her team and tried to have a conversation to find out, all right, what's going on? How can we help you with this? Because she was saying she doesn't want that doubt playing in her mind, and she didn't like how some athletes get really beat down mentally. She's seen athletes cry in locker rooms after talking to the media because the media brought up certain questions that planted more doubt in the mind of the athlete, and the athletes crash mentally. Naomi Osaka saying she's seen and heard all these things, so she didn't want it to happen to her, so she was going to ignore the media. The tournament reached out to her to try to speak to her to find out how they could make things work. She ignored them. She didn't say anything. Now, she talked to her Instagram and her Twitter, but she wouldn't talk to the actual organizer of the event, the people who actually write the checks. She wouldn't talk to them, but she would talk to Instagram and Twitter. Then the tournament announced, because then the tournament started, or was about to start at least, and Naomi Osaka followed through on her threat. She did not speak to the media. They fined her. And the media, they announced, not the media fined her, but the tournament fined her. And Naomi had also posted shortly after the tournament announced, after Naomi ignored them, they announced, look, if you don't speak to the media, we're going to fine you. And Naomi posted a kind of snarky tweet or a post or wherever she posted it, that when they say they're gonna, they're talking to me like they're gonna make me speak to the media, I just have to laugh. So it was kind of like a middle finger, kind of like an FU to the tournament. Like, I'm gonna do what I want to do. Y'all ain't gonna make me. I'm laughing at you. You're not gonna make me do what I want to do. Then they fined her. They actually did it. And then other tournaments in unison, working together with the French Open, said, look, if you continue to not speak to the media, not only are we going to fine you even more money every time you don't do it, we're also going to possibly ban you from playing in our tournament. So not only will you not play in this one, you're not going to play in other tournaments. If you don't cooperate with them, we're not going to cooperate with you. So what does Naomi Osaka do? She stopped laughing, apparently, and she just pulled out of the tournament. And when she pulled out of the tournament, she cited for the first time, oh, this is a mental health issue. So now it became a mental health issue. And when she finally uttered the words mental health, now all the mental health experts, the mental health professionals, and all the defenders of Naomi Osaka, and Naomi Osaka is mixed, black and Asian, so now defenders of women, and now defenders of black people, and defenders of black females, and mental health. She was just a perfect mix of all these protected groups. They all came out of the bushes to defend her. And it became a whole big conversation that went on for a few days on social media. And the thing is this, that to me, that particular situation when it came to Naomi Osaka, I felt like she was bastardizing the concept of mental health, because when she made her initial announcement about not speaking to the media, she said nothing of mental health. She said, hey, I just don't want seeds of doubt planted in my mind about the kind of questions that reporters ask, which I 100% understand that she didn't want those seeds of doubt, and that's why she was wary of speaking to the media. I get it. At the same time, I get that your contractual obligation to the people who pay you the big money, the only reason we know your name is that you speak to the media. So I get that there's a part of the game that she didn't like, but guess what? I told you about this in episode 1663. What is your favorite flavor of shit sandwich? No matter what you do in life, there is a shit sandwich you have to eat. For Naomi Osaka, the shit sandwich is you got to talk to the media. That's the shit sandwich. You gotta answer these questions and receive these questions that could possibly plant seeds of doubt in your mind. This comes with the game that you're in. For Simone Biles, she accepted this title of GOAT. When you accept the title of GOAT, the shit sandwich that comes with it is everyone is expecting you to perform at a high level. And if you can't deal with that pressure, then you got to lose that title of GOAT. And you must be stripped of that title because you won't perform under pressure. Pressure comes with being the greatest. If you're the greatest at what you do, there is pressure, because every time you step out there, everybody's like, damn, all right, let's see if she's really that great. This part of being the greatest is that people expect you to be great, and then you have to do it anyway. That is the shit sandwich that you have to eat. And Simone Biles, more or less said, that pressure kind of got to her, and it got in her way, and it stopped her from being able to perform. So now we got to question that GOAT title. Hey, I still think Simone Biles is great for what she has done up to this point. She's very decorated, won a lot of medals, even outside of what happened in the 2020/2021 Olympics. She's still great at what she does, but we got to question that GOAT title simply because when you had it and you showed up on the stage with all these expectations, you didn't perform. It's not that you performed poorly, you didn't perform at all. You didn't show up, you quit. So we got to question that. Now again, everybody, 1663, listen to it yourself. There is a shit sandwich that comes with everything you do in life. She didn't want to eat that shit sandwich. Naomi Osaka didn't want to eat that shit sandwich. These are just two examples. I'm just using these two because these are two that are coming to mind. There are two that have been high profile over the last few months. Again, from when I'm recording this, maybe something else will pop up between now and next time, by the time you hear this. But we're talking about how to be tough when weakness is celebrated. Both of these people were being celebrated for, in the way that I'm talking about it here today, this is weakness. You don't want to eat the shit sandwich that comes with all the rest of this beautiful full course meal that you get of being great and making money and being known and being one of the best in your sport. You don't want to eat the little shit sandwich that comes with it. Then, hey, this is part of the game. And anyone who is going to ignore these things and try to cover it up, you're not being honest about the situation. But I am. That's why I got the mic. Point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is how to be tough in a world that is espousing and celebrating weakness for the mental health advocates out there. And I just talked about it a lot right here. From the website mentalhealth.gov, here's the definition of mental health. Again, the website is mentalhealth.gov. So this is the government's definition of mental health. And we can't discredit the government now, because how many of you got masks on or social distancing and got vaccinated? So if you listen to the government on that, we can listen to the government on this. Quote, mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, feel, and act. Close quote. So mental health is basically everything that's going on in your mind. Fine. Mental health is not an excuse for quitting, folks. Nor is mental health a shield from criticism when your mental toughness fails you. Let me say that one more time. Mental health is not an excuse for quitting, nor is mental health a shield from criticism when your mental toughness fails you. Now, I understand that this can happen to any one of us. Any one of us could be Naomi Osaka and say, I don't want to talk to the media because they might shatter. Right now, my confidence is hanging by a thread, and the wrong question might shatter my confidence and affect my performance. I 100% understand that it can and has happened to all of us. And if and when that does happen, then you have to improve, get better, and be ready for the next time. In other words, work on your fucking game. Life is tough. All right, it's not just these people that I mentioned that are high profile. Life is tough for everybody. And unlike some celebrities who you may have heard of, many of us do not have the luxury of not showing up to work when we feel weak. Many of us don't have the luxury of not doing what we committed to just because we don't want to eat the shit sandwich. And many of us have no choice but to eat the shit sandwich. We push through it. Now, is that a bad thing? Is that a good thing? Well, it depends on who you ask. It doesn't really matter. But we're not going to create a culture, at least not here at Work on Your Game, of pacifying people for quitting and then calling it strength because they had the strength to walk away. They had the strength to quit. No. If you don't want to eat the shit sandwich, don't get in the game. Every game you get in involves a shit sandwich. You must eat the shit sandwich if you want to be in the game. If you call yourself the best or one of the best, you got to love the shit sandwich. We're not going to be doing that here. Anyone, again, can lose. Anyone can be beaten. You can even feel weak and you can even underperform. But take that as a sign that you need to work on your game. Now, if you feel weak during performance or you underperform during performance or you regurgitate the shit sandwich, that means you need to work on your game. We're not going to call this strength because we're not going to normalize weakness as a virtue. And there is a culture and a wave of people out there who seem to want to normalize weakness just by putting the label mental health on it. That means it's okay to normalize weakness. Bullshit. Mental toughness is part of the deal over here. And it's actually part of your mental health. Mental toughness is part of your mental health. These are not diametrically opposed. But this here, work on your game, and here at Work on Your Game, you finish the game or the game finishes you. Period. Let's recap today's class, which is how to be tough when weakness is celebrated. Definition of strength is strong enough to withstand adverse conditions or rough handling. If you want to be tough, you got to hang in there when things get tough. You got to show up when things are tough. It is not tough and it is not strong to walk away when things get tough. Today we are talking about this episode is about how toughness is built, and it is built by staying in the game and playing when the game is tough. That is the essence of the third day. Point number 2. Definition of weak is liable to break or give way under pressure or easily damaged. Challenge is what you want. It is not something to avoid. When you abdicate when things get tough, you cannot become tough through that. All right, you cannot become tough by avoiding tough situations. The tough situations are where you reveal, measure, and build your toughness. And if you put yourself on a pedestal or people put you on a pedestal and you embrace that pedestal, then you got to embrace the shit sandwich that comes with being on a pedestal. It is not all fun and games. Point number 3, for the mental health advocates out there, mentalhealth.gov says mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, feel, and act. Mental health, just throwing that phrase out there, is not an excuse for quitting, nor is it a shield for criticism when your mental toughness fails you. All right, that can happen to anybody. And when it does, work on your fucking game so it doesn't happen to you again. And unlike some people who you may have heard of, many of us do not have the luxury of not working when we don't feel like eating the shit sandwich. We push through that. So is that a bad or good thing? It doesn't really matter how you feel about it. It just is a thing. But we're not going to create a culture, especially not over here, of pacifying people for quitting and then calling it strength. That's not strength. We will not be doing that here. And again, you can lose, you can get beaten, you can even feel weak, you can even underperform. But take that as a sign that you need to work on your game. We're not going to call that strength because we will not normalize weakness as a virtue. Mental toughness is part of the deal here. It is actually. It is part of mental health. These are not diametrically opposed, but over here, work on your game. You will either finish the game that you signed up for, eat the shit sandwich anime, or this game is going to finish you. Send me a text, tell me the best insight you got from today's class. If you hated everything that I said, you can text me and tell me that as well. I'll engage with you. If you are looking for someone who can help coach you on that mental toughness, on your accountability, on showing up, on eating the damn shit sandwich, because you must eat one no matter what you do in life, succeed or fail, then you may be a candidate for the third day mastermind. Go to workonyourgameuniversity.com/call. Sign up for a quick Zoom call with me. We'll talk about where you're at, where you want to go, how I could possibly be the bridge between the two, and we'll go from there. Work on your game. Dre all day.